Damien, China, Evergrande, default. We've been waiting for that D word for a while, Damien. It comes and it's just like, okay, what next? What next, Damien?
The news that everyone's been waiting for. So look, yes, restricted default. Fitch placed both Evergrande and Kaizen in restricted default overnight. And look, that's about $30 billion in offshore bonds, which are now subject to cross defaults, and so we're going to see how it all shakes loose. For me, it's going to be, prioritizing creditors. And if you look at our friends at Marathon, Ashmore, UBS, Allianz, BlackRock, all of which own these bonds, they probably have very low expectations on what they're going to get paid back, especially after the 7-member credit risk committee was formed with the Guangdong provincial government, or 2 entities therein, sitting on the board. They're going to prioritize employees. They're going to prioritize homeowners, suppliers, and offshore creditors are going to be bottom of the stack, and that is the risk. So what is the recovery, Jonathan, on these bonds for offshore creditors? The verdict is still out, but they're trading at 20 cents on the dollar, so that gives you some semblance of where we are.
Well, the bar is pretty low. Basically, people are having pretty low expectations. I do wonder, though, if you take a step back, what this means in terms of how China will handle a restructuring. This is the first really major restructuring at a time when we've kind of cast aside fears of contagion, right? I mean, the government seems to be trying to step in. But there is a larger message for the Chinese credit markets, especially as international investors want to get in, especially with those yields where they are.
Well, I think you got to look at Baosheng Bank, which defaulted. You got to look at H&A, which is the airline conglomerate, which also defaulted. Those are your benchmarks. Those are your litmus tests for how this is going to shake out. And again, what it means is that the government's going to be actively involved. They're going to prioritize stability, Lisa, but they're probably going to bail in offshore creditors when necessary, right? So, at the end of the day, that's what you got to look at. That's going to be sort of, your model for how this is going to proceed. But again, the real estate sector is a different beast altogether. I mean, it accounts for 25% of China's economic output, 75% of household wealth. So, the verdict is out again.
Hold on a second, Damien. I just want you to clarify. You said bail in overseas investors. Elaborate. What do you think that the government's going to do?
They're going to treat them as, look, I mean, they still need access to offshore credit markets, offshore capital. So they're going to, treat offshore creditors as sort of like a bastard stepchild and then bring them in when necessary, right? I mean, let's take a look at the underlying holdings between Kaizen and Evergrande. I mean, Kaizen's focused on urban redevelopment projects. The market thinks that its properties are worth so much more and they're so much more liquid than Evergrande, which is basically owns theme parks in the middle of nowhere. They own, it's in tier 3 cities, sorry. And, so their property valuations are probably a lot less liquid and certainly a lot lower than Kaizen. So, we're going to see a lot. And by the way, we're also going to see the keep well provision. Remember, these property developers have issued their bonds via some offshore entity. And there's a gentleman's handshake between the operating company and the holding company offshore as to whether or not they're going to even pay back those creditors. That has yet to be tested in the China legal system. And we're going to see some evidence of that as well.